Jefferson Robbins with NCW Life. The 12th legislative district used to be the largest in Washington. That has been supplanted after 2 rounds of redistricting by the 7th district, which spans all the way from Colville and Kettle Falls to the Methow Valley and Waterville, and encompasses East Wenatchee and a small portion of the city of Wenatchee as well. State Representative Jacquelin Maycumber, who's a Republican, is leaving that seat for a congressional run. 2 fellow Republicans are now seeking to take that post, Andrew Engell of Colville and Soo Ing-Moody of Twisp. They're both with us today. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Andrew, we'll start with you. You are first in ballot position, so the first question will go to you. In 1 minute, could you just introduce yourself to our viewers as if they've never met you and don't know what you're running for?
Great. Yeah, my name is Andrew Engell. I grew up in the district in the Colville area, where I've been deeply involved in my community throughout my life. I would say community service has defined me with been part of 17 community organizations, including Colville Rotary and the Addy Fire Department and others. And faith, family, and freedom are the values that embody who I am and what I stand for. On Sunday mornings, people will find me with my wife and my 4 children at First Baptist Church, where we've been involved for many years. And as you get to know me, you'll find that I believe in the freedom of others just as much as in the freedom for myself. As a result of my reputation and experience, Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers hired me, and I've enjoyed working with thousands of people, agencies, nonprofits, local governments, and state representatives on her behalf for the last 7 years. And so I believe that I have the connections and the right experience to get this job done, to be a strong voice for the people of the 7th District.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I appreciate it. Sue, it's good to see you here. If you could give us just 1 minute to introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me. Well, I am here because I'm running for the 7th District, like you said, to use my experience. For those of you who do not know me, I'm the former mayor of the town of Twisp for the last 13 years, and in that time, I've served through 3 federally declared wildfire disasters and worked at the state level on various fronts for many issues, also serving as president of the Association Washington Cities in 2020. So I have been working already at the state level. I also currently work for the Washington State Department of Commerce for the North Central Washington region. I am married to a paramedic who works in North Central Washington, and we have 2 wonderful boys who are now in college. I'm just proud to say that, I'm running to be a strong voice as well of experience here for us, because I know that with our divisive politics these days, we're going to need to be able to have someone who can build those bridges, and I'm ready to do that here for our 7th District.
Thank you, Sue. I'm going to stick with you for the second question, and you have 2 minutes for this response. What would you say is the most important issue facing the 7th District right now?
I would say there's several things. I mean, we're hearing a lot these days about the fact that the cost of living is really impacting a lot of the people on the ground. And I think there's a complex web of things that we can be working on at the legislature on that front alone. I know our various industries, agriculture, are changing. We're talking about energy needs to better support our working businesses, small and larger industries here in North Central Washington. And those are going to be continuing to be those conversation points that we need to talk about, as well as about housing, and homelessness. What does that look like here in our district? Does look different than in other parts of Western Washington and more urban areas. So those are some of the areas that I'm hearing about. But in addition, one of the biggest things that I know I'm familiar with is wildfires. We continue every year to have the wildfires, and I was mayor during the 2014 Carlton Complex and then the Twisp River fires in 2015, and I can say that those have been game changers. It's been a decade now since those fires. We've had some progress, but we know that initial attack and strong management of our natural areas is going to continue to be one of the things that we need to continue to work on, especially for the 7th District. This is part of our industry as well in the 7th District. We are very heavily surrounded by natural areas, and we've been blessed for that, And so our traditional industries have been dependent on that. And I think that there's an opportunity here for that as well, for economic development, to bring some of those industries back, especially in light of the housing crisis that we're recognizing currently exists. So, I think public safety is another concern that we're hearing a lot of. I know when I talk to people, Small businesses are suffering in North Central Washington. There's issues of theft, and then response. I know paramedics like my husband, they're responding, and there's issues for reimbursement rates being too low, and support for law enforcement. We need all of that. So there's a lot to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I appreciate it. Andrew, the same question goes back to you. What's the most important issue from your perspective facing the 7th District right now?
Well, the number one job of government is public safety, and it's something we need to do better at. I would say the 7th District does not have as severe of problems with that as some other parts of our state, but people in the rural areas have low tolerance for crime, and they see the problems in Seattle and Spokane, and they're concerned about that growing. And so certainly supporting our law enforcement and enhancing public safety is a top priority. But I also have found, as I'm doorbelling and talking with people, that the high cost of living is the biggest concern I hear about. Inflation and the cost of living is going up faster than the paychecks are. And so there's a lot of things we can do to address that. Some of it is the energy policies have caused energy to go up. We've had, some things are outside of our control, but those are things we need to get a hold of. Housing is a major concern, and I've worked on housing a fair bit, and it's something we need to cut back on regulations and streamline permitting so that we can address those issues more appropriately. But also, supporting our veterans. We've got parents are concerned about schools. We need to keep working on that, protect the Second Amendment. There are a lot of issues in this district, and I'm looking forward to getting to work on them on the behalf of the people.
Andrew, I'll stick with you for this question. Both of you have jobs or past roles in which you kind of interface with the legislature or get to observe its workings, and some things they do affect you or your constituencies. So what are some decisions, Andrew, made by the legislature in the past session, say the most recent session, that you saw and you disagreed with? You said, if I'd been in position at that time, I would have voted differently.
Well, this last year, they had it was the Puget Sound Energy, what's often called the natural gas ban, which maybe is a little bit sensational, but I certainly disagreed with that policy. We need all of the above energies to be considered and allowed. We need people to have energy choice. So I strongly disagree with that, and I fully support the initiative to repeal that law. It's on the ballot in November.
And yourself, Sue, did you notice anything coming through the legislature in the past session that didn't sit right with you?
There's a couple of things, particularly pertaining to law enforcement, public safety, that has been an issue and growing concern, I think, in our local areas. Having had a police department, I know that that has been a concern. The pursuits, that has been since rectified to some degree, but I also have to say response. We have a major drug issue here growing in our state and country. And behavioral health, we don't have enough beds and the jail systems to really support our law enforcement. So I think that those are some of the laws that I'd like to look at and say, how can we better create policy that works for our local governments and our local law enforcement as they're, doing the job that needs to be done. We do know that, with behavioral health and crime and indigent defense now being some of those laws that you're talking about, the policies, how does that fit in? That's one I disagree with, because how does that fit in? I recognize that there is a shortage. There's overworking and too many hours for some of our defense attorneys, but the whole system needs to be really looked at. We need a pipeline as well. So perhaps the answer is not that I disagree as much on the intent as however, I think that how things are written, are really going to be the devil's in the details on how it affects local government, especially having been and served in local government. I can say that sometimes the way it's written is poor, and it fails us at the local level. So again, some of that's the reason why I want to serve, because I think looking through that local government lens is going to be critical to making sure that our 7th District policies, the policies that come through Olympia, are going to work for us here in the 7th District.
Speaking of local government agencies, schools, they rely on bonds to build their critical infrastructure and their new buildings and to fix things that just aren't working for students. And they need a 60% supermajority to pass bond proposals. This year, the Eastmont School District, which is in your legislative district, tried twice to pass a $117 million bond issue, an investment for school improvements. Voter approval topped out both times, first at 58%, second time at 59%, just barely outside that 60% threshold. Sue, the question to you first, should the supermajority threshold be removed to allow local school districts to an easier path to win those funds that they need?
Well, I will say I do not think that removing this supermajority, the vote is going to be the answer here. I think what we're seeing, though, with that particular incidence that you're describing, because the reason why I don't think we should remove it is that it is something that we should have absolute buy-in. We need to know that changing the budget like that and impacting the pocketbooks of our constituents should have a high threshold. So I don't think lowering it is the answer. However, the issue that I think you're describing here comes down to what do we need to do to better service our school districts? And I think that's another question that I would be happier to answer, because I think we do have some work to do when we think about how do we budget for our education at the state level? What are those line items looking like? It sounds like there's several line items that are failing our students and our communities, our teachers, and our institutions. And yet we know that we're spending more on education than we have in the past. And so what does that mean? I think we need to really revisit what we're spending it on, how we make it more sustainable for our school districts to be strong and vital. That is going to be a requirement that I would like to see for our future generations. Our future depends on it, and I think it's the job of our legislature, and if I'm in, I would love to roll my sleeves up to get that work done, because it is complex. It is not simple, otherwise it would already be done. But I do think we have an opportunity here to really revisit the system. It's time to look at it, because we are now in a different time, especially with what our students are needing to learn for the future, and innovation is part of it. And so again, education will look different, and I think we need to address that.
And Andrew, the same question to you. Any candidate who is running for office and wins 59% has won office, but that doesn't apply if you're trying to pass a school bond. So should that threshold be lowered or removed?
Well, I believe that taxation is something that affects obviously everyone, and a majority, we should have a supermajority for tax increases in general, I think, but certainly for tax increases like bonds that are going to last for 20 or 30 or more years, where it's the people who are in the school will be paying off these bonds. They don't have a chance to vote on them. I believe we need to maintain the supermajority. What we need to do is work with local communities and build support for these things that can go beyond. We need 60% of people to agree. And there's other issues that cause people to have some trust issues. I do think we need to empower parents and school boards to have more authority with how they run their schools, and I think some of that could help build trust and confidence in our schools. I also think we could look at reforming how school funding is working. The state's paramount job is to fund public education, and there's been lots of issues with that over the years, or concerns. And I don't support changing that. I think we need to look at how we can get the job done and how we can build more support beyond that 60% threshold.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier in your introduction, Andrew, was Second Amendment issues. And Washington has spent some time in the last 5 to 7 years placing new guidelines, new regulations on firearm ownership and possession and sale. House Bill 2118 just passed this past session. It established additional requirements for firearm dealers, including background checks for employees, bars and grates, security, surveillance video, and other measures. At least one business here in Wenatchee has said they have to give up selling firearms. They sell lots of stuff, but firearms is one of them, because it's just going to be too expensive to comply with that law. Does this need to be revisited?
Yes, I believe it does. I'm a strong Second Amendment supporter, and I believe that we need to protect people's rights to keep and bear arms. I believe a lot of the legislation we've passed in Washington over the past several years has been an infringement on people's rights. And I believe that what you're addressing here is specific to firearms, but also to the broader business in general, that our regulatory complexity is driving a lot of small mom and pop businesses out. And we need to simplify things to where people can comply in a way that is protecting the public safety and allowing businesses to thrive in our communities.
And Sue, from your perspective, again, the question was regulations on firearms dealers and what they have to do to keep their collection secure at their point of sale. Is this a restriction that needs to be revisited?
You know, I feel like regulation should be at a minimum for what we need to do. Not just, I'm not talking just for guns, but generally because that, you know, we want to make sure our small businesses are able to stay vital. However, regarding guns, I do also support the Second Amendment rights. There are already existing laws that do protect these freedoms, and yet, you know, making the small businesses have to suffer when there's already certain safeguards is, I think, something that is unnecessary. But what we do need to do is focus on why are these laws being pushed out there? And that's what I think is the bigger question, again, going to the root of the problem, and that is the criminals. The concern is that there's going to be access by criminals to get to these guns, and I do think that there is room there that we need to better strengthen our response to the people who are infringing on these rights and making it bad for everyone, basically. So I think really focusing more on the criminal side of things and what we can do. It's also about behavioral health. You know, that is exasperating a lot of the criminality that we're seeing. You know, it is people, you know, who are killing people. And whether they use guns or something else, I think that we really need to really get at the heart of that and focus more on that and how we can better control, you know, the criminal behavior, including as it pertains to guns. So mental health. And then the third thing I will say too is that there's a lot of dangerous rhetoric right now that I feel that, you know, is spurring the hatefulness and the crimes that we're, you know, the crimes that are fueling this conversation even more about the Second Amendment. And we really do need to take it down. And again, building those bridges is going to be key to helping that to happen.
Well, the 7th District is a very large district, as we have discussed, and you both hail from small towns within it, but there's lots and lots of small towns in the 7th District. Do you think, and Sue, I'll start with you, that you can, you know, fairly represent the constituents of the 7th in the legislature, just given the geographic size and distinction of all the places that you'd have to serve?
Oh, I would say unequivocally yes, absolutely. And the reason is because I've already had that experience. I have been the president, like I said, former president of the Association of Washington Cities, which represents all 281 cities across the state of Washington. And, you know, that is not, I was elected in that position by all the local elected officials of the city body, and I'm proud of that. Now, what that entailed was 9 years of serving on the board, as well as, in particular, representing North Central Washington, by the way, in that. And moving forward, you know, as president and the executive board, it really is, you know, talking about the diverse needs of all the local communities, including the 7th. And I would say, you know, I'm proud to be endorsed by the current mayor and of both the East Wenatchee, out east, Medellin Falls. I just had a wonderful conversation yesterday with the mayor of Chihuahua. And so, you know, yes, I can absolutely say that although it's a huge district, I am very familiar with various aspects of the 7th District because of my work that I've done statewide already and would continue to do. So yes, I'm very confident in it, and I'd be excited to bring it all together and hear the various voices as we move forward. And also, I want to say, I focused on the cities, but, you know, I've also worked with WASAC, the Washington State Association of Counties, heavily, being on the executive board with the city governments. We partner together with the counties and as local government. And so I think with that, absolutely, I think there's a lot that we can do together. So thank you for the question.
And Andrew, the same question to you. A lot of travel involved in meeting everybody in the 7th and learning their needs and their requirements. Do you think you can fairly represent all those folks that would fall within your constituency?
Absolutely. So for the last 7.5 years, I've had the responsibility of maintaining relationships and being the conduit between the Congresswoman and the people across 12 counties. And so I've built relationships with the county commissioners, mayors, city administrators, farmers, all types of people in those areas. And so I'm very confident, and if you look at my endorsement list on my website, you'll see that I've been endorsed by a large number of those people throughout my area that I've worked.
Did you agree, Andrew, with the federal court decision to redraw the 7th district? The district was redrawn once in 2021 and again just this past year based on a federal lawsuit.
You know, that's a good question, and it's something that's outside of my control, clearly. I'll say the 7th district was not the target of that redistricting. You know, I think we were just on the periphery. It got affected. So it's, you know, I'm going to go along with whatever the courts decide on that. I believe that in our process, I personally would have liked to stick with the bipartisan redistricting commission's decisions, but I will abide by whatever the lawmakers or the judges decide.
And Sue, your thoughts on the federal court decision that made the 7th into the shape that it has right now?
Well, I think it was an interesting thing, and since I was not in the legislature at that time, I would say I too will just go with what has been decided. And that being said, you know, I think no matter what the line looks like, it's a huge district, no matter. And you know, I feel that it is just a part of it. And for me, I'm happy to serve because I'm in it now. I will say I wasn't previously. And so, I mean, I certainly can't shoot that down. But I will say I do love this district. I call this home, and I find this, the entire 7th, to be just such a gorgeous place to live. And I feel very blessed that we get to serve in this. So, yeah.
And our closing question, and we'll start with you, Sue, in 1 minute. Can you tell me why people should vote for you for the 7th Legislative District's House of Representatives seat?
Well, again, thank you so much for having me here today. It's been a pleasure just having served in public office for the last 14 years. I take that oath of office very seriously. It is, for me, all about the people. It is a public service, and I do it to the best of my ability always. I do my homework, and I think that the biggest thing that I would say that I bring to the table is, especially in our divisive times right now, it's the relationships, the trusted relationships that I bring to the table here right now to be able to work across the aisle with both sides. As the former mayor of Twisp, it was a nonpartisan position, and therefore did not, you know, it really required us to do everything we can working with everyone. I know people will say they want to work across the aisle, but for me, I've done it. And that's what it's going to take in order for people to be able to receive us. It's a two-way street, right? It's like, on the one hand, we want to, but on the other hand, someone has to say, yes, I want to work with you as well. And that's where trust comes in. So I would offer that, and I thank you so much for having me here today. It's about experience all the way and the love of service.
Thank you very much. Andrew, you want to serve the 7th District as well? In 1 minute, why should voters choose you?
Yes, I believe that I have a strong reputation. If you talk to the people I've worked with in the eastern part of the district, Wenatchee is a new area to me, and I'm actively working to get to know the people here, and I've enjoyed the ones I have, and I'm going to keep working for that. But I believe that being a strong conservative Christian family man who has a strong, deep history in the dedication to public and private service makes me the kind of candidate people are looking for in the 7th District. I have you know, deep ties. I have experience. I've worked with lots of people. And I just believe that that's the kind of person we're looking for. And I also am dedicated to treating everyone with dignity and respect while standing firm on the solid conservative principles that dominate the 7th District.
Well, Andrew Engell and Soo Ing-Moody, running for 7th District State Representative, thank you both very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jefferson.
You're watching the NCW Life channel.